Call the school committee, Southborough School Committee open meeting of Wednesday, January 8th, 2020 into session. And the first item on the agenda is audience sharing. Anyone have anything to share? Okay, so we'll move on to new business. First is legislative update.
So just an update on the Student Opportunity Act. We are monitoring the landscape very closely, and we are actually waiting for the governor's House 2 budget to be released. But some information that we received is around special education transportation reimbursement. So in FY21, we will receive 25% reimbursement of our special education transportation services, and we will receive an incremental increase reimbursement over the next 4 years. So that is positive news. This current year, our budget for special education transportation is a little under $500,000. So that is very positive in terms of positive, positive outcome of the new legislation. And then we're also waiting to see what our Chapter 70 state aid will be. We are predicting that there won't be much of a change, given the fact that the Student Opportunity Act is about reallocating resources to districts who have not been able to financially afford education in their communities. And the hold harmless provision is part of the Student Opportunity Act. So the good news is Southborough will not receive any less state aid than it did last year, so, which is positive.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we can move. Sorry, I went off the wrong thing. Communications update is the next item.
Sure. So just an update on some of the thinking we've been doing around communication in our district. It's been an annual goal, and a part of our Vision 2020, strategically planning for the future as a focus area. So this year, we're really looking at how we communicate, making sure there's coherence in communication, and really thinking about how we're branding our district and what story we're telling parents. So I do have some data that I'd like to show in terms of communication, and if Mr. Lavoie can put the chart. One of the tools that we're using is the analytics of the communication tools. Mm-hmm. We're able to now analyze how people are accessing information, how many people, what they're clicking on, what time they're opening up emails. So I'd like to show you some of the data that we have around that. Okay. And I'll use the Ennisborough News as kind of an example of what that will look like, what that looks like. Someone else might be connected. So maybe I will not show you some data. I can speak to it. So some of the analytics that we are looking at is how many new people each month are signing up to access our communications. So for example, when we sent out the back to school newsletter, we had 4,990 subscribers to the Constant Contact, and since then we've added a little over 100 subscribers to that newsletter. So that's nice to see that the community is accessing that information. We also are monitoring the open rate of the communications we send. So an average of the 5,100, 61% on average of the people we're sending the emails to are actually opening the emails. Doesn't mean they're reading it, but they are accessing it. And of of the emails that we send, we can also see what they're reading and what links they're accessing in terms of the links that are available. So for example, this past December, Ennisboro District Newsletter, primarily the 2021 calendar was very popular, and that was the link that was accessed the most. But we also saw people accessing the school start time website, as well as some of the strategic planning information, which was nice to see. And then in terms of how people are accessing the information, on what device, we're seeing that on average 47% of people who access the information are actually reading it on a mobile device. And then conversely, 53% are accessing the information from a desktop. So one of the things we're looking at is making sure that the information we send out is mobile device friendly, and that it actually can be read and looked at. And then in terms of our average click rate, so when we have links, we're averaging around 16.2% in terms of the links that are being accessed on the website. So it's great information. We are monitoring trends in terms of how much subscribership as well as readership, and we are experimenting with different ways and different times of communication. And one of the goals that we're working on really is looking at all the communications, looking at the continuum of communications that happen pre-K through grade 8. The principals in the schools do an amazing job of sending out consistent newsletters and emails. At the district level, we're trying to model that to make sure that once a month there's a consistent communication and presence. But one of the pieces of work that we need to do is really looking at what is the collective experience of a parent. So if you have a parent who has a child at Finn, Woodward, and Trottier, what is that experience in terms of the communications you're receiving? And some of the feedback we've received is that it's overwhelming. So we're really, we need to engage in those types of conversations. And some of the feedback we've received is that the more concise, the better. That people don't prefer to scroll down and read lengthy information. They also like choice, so they like to see the headers up front so they can choose what they read, because there might be one thing that piques their interest and that's all they want to read. So they don't want to have to scroll through a lot of information. People prefer school or student-specific communications versus district communications. So when you look at the read rate, school-based communications are read much more than district communications. And then educator communications are read more than school communications. So the closer we are to the student, the greater readership that we have, which is not surprising. We're also looking at making sure that we're pushing information out to the community versus just posting things to our website where it's passive and people actually have to go and visit. The website is more of a place where if people are interested in learning about the Southborough school system, they're visiting, but they're not actively going there on a daily basis to see what's happening. And then lastly, some of the information we've received is just really showcasing the students' work and really showcasing what's happening in our classrooms and our schools is really what people are interested in seeing. So in terms of the communication message, we're really looking at trying to streamline our communication, being consistent, and then looking at that continuum of experiences. The one-call communication tool that we use is primarily for emergency information that we're using at the district level, so important information that's sent out. And at the school level, it's the primary means of communication to send out newsletters and links and so forth. And I think that we're also looking at how do we respond to families if there's an emergency. So if there is an emergency, how do we respond? If there's a specific incident at a school, how do we respond just to that school, making sure that we have the capability and the flexibility to have those dynamic conversations and communications. So overall, we're still investigating and really thinking about our communications plan and making sure that it's consistent, and also looking at how we can enhance it. We do have some initial data from our strategic plans survey data that I was going to share. And it's really interesting, the data, the preliminary data is showing that we've had 820 responses to the strategic plan survey. And it's showing that and the question was, how do parents get most of their information? So the top three at this time are school newsletters. So they're accessing the school newsletters. They're accessing automated calls to get information. And then other parents in social media and word of mouth was tied for the third. So it's interesting to see the messaging and how parents are actually getting information about what's happening in our schools. So always more work to improve, more opportunities to improve. The schools, again, are doing a really nice job of communication, and they're also using some of the social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, and we're looking at expanding some of those to the district level as well. So that's an update, and
Okay.
happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone have any?
One clarification, you said on average people are something about 16.2% of the links on the website?
So when a communication is sent out, if there's a link on that communication, let's say there's 3 or 4 links on a one call that principal sends out, that link is accessed those links are accessed by 16% of the people who are reading the website of the communication.
So it's across all communications, not just the district communications?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it does vary on how the newsletters are sent out. For example, if it's a one call and the message is click here to access the newsletter,
Yeah.
then we're seeing 100%.
Yeah.
But if it's a different communication tool, the click rate of the links on that communication is 16%. So people are going to those links 16%.
Like click here for information
Exactly.
on X, and then.
Correct.
Okay.
This is great info. I mean, this is the first time we've ever had anything like this. So, well,
And I have wonderful graphs too that I'd love to share.
see that something. But the other thing on the email open rate, I thought was very good. What was it?
61. Is that district or all emails?
So that is, for that particular, that is the district.
Okay. That's really good.
And it's actually higher at the school level. So-
Okay.
I like the point about making it mobile, making the messages
Yeah.
mobile friendly, because that's where I see myself, and I'm obviously not alone, and the scrolling
Yeah.
is long, and they're wonderfully formatted, but they're not mobile formatted really, so I think that would be great.
And the tools that we have, or some of the tools we have, you actually can see, you can view it from the perspective of mobile phone user,
Mm.
so, which is nice, and then
Yeah.
you can edit and change.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So the what was I going to ask? Oh, are you looking, when we were talking about consistency across communications, are you looking at like from the district level to the principal level to the teacher level to even like the PT or not the SOS level, like to kind of have consistency around that? Like it would be great if there was like a single branded template or something like that because there's some teachers use this thing and some teachers use that thing, and so then you're getting emails from all these different sources, and then sometimes they get caught in your spam filters and you never even see them, and so it would be great if it was just like one system that everybody could use.
I think that I think it's consistency is important. When you learn one tool as a parent at Finn School, and then you move to woodworking, you have to learn another tool.
Yeah.
Trottier is using another. All great tools, but it's difficult to keep up with it. So
Right.
if we are looking at trying to streamline as much as possible where we can.
And it is like when you said parents with kids in multiple schools, it does get over. I mean, you know, everybody knows it does get overwhelming, and the amount of different communications
and when people are feeling overwhelmed, what happens is they typically tune out.
Yeah.
They can't handle the volume of information.
Yeah.
And the principals, you have a lot of experience with your communications and have done work looking at what works well for your building. So the principals are a great wealth of information too.
Are you tracking social media engagement? Because I know there are issues with Facebook.
So we haven't. We don't have that capability yet. The analytics around our social media, but it's something that, you know, something I think at the schools they use it more widely than at the district level. Kathleen,
the Samore site that I use tracks it. Has a lot of analytical data that I track and respond to. So and Facebook gives you a little bit. Twitter, you know, just your notifications come and you can look at who's liked it. But really, the Samore site gives some really good information.
The social media, I feel like the challenge there is that organic reach is low. So people like to follow you on Facebook and Twitter and all that, but you really have to pay to play at this point, unless and that's something that I would love to be a part of as you talk about this more, because Facebook groups you can have a lot more reach with. You know, if there was like a school representative who went into the Southborough Care and Share group on Facebook where parents see a lot of stuff, that's a great way to reach parents. So there's ways to kind of get around it a little bit.
I think also as the restructuring plan that we talked about in the spring of last year and have moved to implement, there was a portion of one of the positions role around communication and marketing.
Yeah.
And that is something that we're looking to really move on and have that person step into that position more. The person who took on that role is learning 2 jobs right now. So the primary job function is taking most of that person's time. But as that person builds capacity in her responsibilities, there'll be many opportunities to start looking at some of this and really streamlining it.
Okay, great. Anyone else all set? Thank you very much. That was very informative. Okay, next we have pre-K to 8 technology update.
So we have Julie Doyle here, who is going to provide a update on technology and STEM in Southborough.
I'm also going to talk about all those different communication tools.
Yes.
So I understand now how it's hard to get a bunch of different communications from a bunch of different tools. What at this point we find some are more sort of age appropriate for the younger kids. So that's why I think we have so many of them, and they're so great. We're having a hard time sort of narrowing down just what is up to grab the most. We got all sorts of tissues. So we're fortunate enough that in Southborough, students and teachers have easy access to a wide range of devices and online platforms for use in the classroom. We're in a really good place with the number of devices per student, and we've established a yearly replacement cycle for those devices. The technology department works to ensure that our infrastructure is more than adequate to support the teaching and learning needs of our school community, and we continue to leverage the E-Ray program and recently upgraded servers in all the schools, and this upgrade increases the speed and reliability of the network. technology can really enhance the learning experience for our students. Our department promotes the use of technology to prepare our students for a technology-rich future, but also to do things that we couldn't do before, to transform the learning and to level the playing fields for all learners. So I'm going to start by sharing some communication and collaboration tools that teachers and students are using, and they are using different tools at each school at this point. So we're now in our second year of using Canvas in both our middle schools as well as at the third year at Algonquin. How is it that Canvas has transformed the learning? Well, one of the main features that we love about Canvas is it now allows teachers to give faster and more valuable feedback. I got permission from this teacher to be able to use this. He uses video comments for his students, and this is an example of him leaving a video comment for a student on a writing assignment.
Michael, fantastic open response. I really enjoyed reading it. Loved your start, loved your ending, how you're connecting it to real life and showing some emotion. You provided nice evidence with a lot of details and explanations and say-mores. Overall, fantastic job. I'd love to see more like this for the rest of the year in terms of your writing. Way to go.
So to me, that is a way that Canvas or a technology tool can sort of transform the experience for a student. You know, that's a little bit different than getting a paperback with like the A- on it. Canvas also allows for all classroom materials to be in one location, so it helps students stay organized. It helps to prepare them for high school because they're using Canvas at the high school, and it helps our high school students really to be prepared for college because Canvas is being used at a lot of colleges. It's helpful when students miss school. They're able to stay on track. Saves time for our teachers, helps them to stay organized. And as they transition from semester to semester, from year to year, it's easy for them to sort of move their course materials into a new online course, and it helps teachers with collaboration. Parents can easily access Canvas to get updates on grades and assignments. I also want to share with you an activity that Sandy Scordato is doing in one of her Canvas courses. I also just want to talk about Sandy's course because I think it's a great one. It's an app inventor course, so another great example of tech integration. The curriculum is based on the teaching the students to think computationally, and they used a block-based programming language, and they design and build mobile apps. With each new project, they learn to code a new feature by adding images and video and sound and movement. But specifically, I was going to show you within Canvas, she has an online discussion going on, and the students were asked to explain that what they're learning and how it is that what they're learning could help them to build a new different type of app. So the students have to respond to that prompt, but they also have to read each other's responses and respond to those. So an online discussion, it's a great experience for them, but it also is a new way for teachers to get feedback, because if you're having a classroom discussion, you generally hear from the kids who raise their hands. With an online discussion, you hear from all the students, which I think is valuable. So Google Classroom is another communication and collaboration tool that's being used at the elementary level. It's more age appropriate for the elementary level. It is a great way to help students stay on track if they've missed school. It's an easy way to differentiate instruction. It also easily integrates with all of the other Google apps for education, which are used really in grades K through 12. So I want to show you an example from a grade 5 teacher at Erie. This is an assignment that I think she gives on a pretty regular basis, and it is when kids need to learn a new list of vocabulary words. So through Google Classroom, they collaborate on this, they call it a cooperative vocabulary slide presentation. And so they each create a slide, so they get their list of vocab words, and they each create a slide, and on the slide they have to add what the word is, they have to use it in a sentence, they have to add a picture. So it allows for creativity, and I think it's just a fun way to learn vocab in a collaborative way. I know when I had to memorize vocab, this would have been a nice tool for me, and maybe made it easier for me to remember certain words when there are pictures attached. Or Seesaw is another one of those communication and collaboration tools. It is a great classroom app that gives valuable feedback to parents and to teachers. It allows students to show what they know in a variety of ways. I have an example from a second grade teacher at Woodward. She loves the app, and she oftentimes has her students record their voices talking about different things, one explaining a math problem. And that to me is richer feedback for the teacher, as opposed to just getting a worksheet handed to them with the math problem done out. To listen to the student's thought process as they're trying to solve the problem, I think is really valuable. This is an example of a project where the kids wrote their New Year's resolutions, and they recorded their voices talking about them. So I thought I would share this with you.
I'm going to be organized when I am cleaning up at school and at home. My resolution for the new year. I'm going to work on being kind to the teachers and being kind to my class and being kind at recess.
It was also a great example for a New Year's resolution for all of us, right? To just be kind. And the last of the communication and collaboration tools that I wanted to share with you is Blooms. And Blooms is really more age appropriate for the younger students and their families. Blooms is being used at Finn. And at Finn, if you're a parent at Finn, you get weekly updates and notifications from the principal. You get weekly updates from the teacher, and each teacher is able to set up what they call a portfolio for each student. And in that portfolio, they share as often as they can pictures of students engaged in learning opportunities. And so each parent is able to just see pictures of their own kids, but it's just, I think, a great window into the child's classroom. I mean, I remember when my kids were in school and they'd come home and what'd you do at school today? Nothing, and that, that was it. I would see a picture that they drew in art, but I think that this is just a great way for parents to be involved. Next, I want to talk about some projects where technology tools promote creativity and critical thinking. So as you all are aware, there are an increasing amount of job opportunities in STEM fields. We are trying to find more ways to incorporate technology and STEM into all content areas where it makes sense. This year, the Massachusetts Executive Office of Education promoted its second annual STEM Week, and they were trying to boost interest and awareness and ability for all learners to envision themselves in STEM education and employment opportunities. As a part of STEM Week, which was in the fall, members of the high school robotics team visited some of our elementary schools in both districts, and it was a smashing success. They came and talked about the robots that they build as part of a team and as part of their competition, but they also explained to all the students, what makes something a robot and how robots are used in the real world. The kids loved hearing from the high schoolers, and I was so impressed with these high schoolers and their ability to, their presentation skills and their excitement around these tools. Coding is something I'm going to talk about next, and technology really is transforming every industry. In 2015, 7 million openings in the US were in occupations that included art and design that valued coding skills. Coding is taught in all the Southborough schools, mostly by the instructional tech specialists, but at Trottier, not only is Sandy Scordato teaching coding in that app inventor course, but they also have a coding unit in the tech ed classes as well. The kids learn to code with online platforms, but they also learn to operate robots with code. As you can see, there's some of the educational robots that are being used. We try to integrate coding lessons in other content areas like ELA and math and social studies. So coding improves problem solving. When kids code, they take complex problems and they break them down into smaller parts. Kids learn what it's like to approach a problem the way a software engineer does, with logical computational thinking. This logical thinking is a really powerful tool that will help them in school and in work and in life. Once a week at NERI, the students go to Libratory, which is a course that's co-taught by the instructional tech specialist Amy Brewis and the librarian Lisa Wagner. The students complete design challenges using the design thinking process. I want to explain one of their design challenges. They were broken up into groups of 3, and they were asked to design a device for someone who's confined to a wheelchair, and that device would be used to propel a tennis ball for the dog of the person who's in a wheelchair. So as you can see, those students are working. Those tables are like whiteboards, so they can write on the tables when they're sort of doing their brainstorming and designing. They use the iPads to document the whole design thinking process. They take pictures and notes, and then they put them all in an app called Book Creator, so they have sort of this finished documentation of the project at the end. They also take videos as they're creating their prototypes. And then I think it's great, they watch the video to see how they can improve their device, and they slow it down, and so they're really using technology in very effective ways. In that class, they're also about to do some 3D design and printing. Along with coding, at Woodward, students are creating digital stories using a variety of tools. This is an example of a quick video that was made using a tool called Adobe Spark, really simple to use, and the students are asked to talk about family traditions.
One tradition that my family has is eating dumplings every Chinese New Year. We go inside our kitchen and make them. First we pat and roll the dough, then we mix a combination of meat and vegetables. Next we put the mix inside a bit of dough. Last, we put them in water for 3 minutes, add cold water, and repeat for 3 times. We use a scoop with holes to scoop them up. Finally, we eat them. I've been doing this every year since I was born. The way the tradition started was when we always had a feast with lots of dumplings. We started making them at our house. My favorite part is, you guessed it, eating the dumplings. After all, the dumplings are so much better when I make them myself. Hard work brings success. After everything, we're all full and pleased, ready for another feast next year.
So Amy Benford is the instructional tech specialist at Woodward, so she was helping the kids with those videos. She's also using podcasting as a new way to tell digital stories, and this is a quick example of part of a podcast that she made where the kids shared some of the things that they learned when they went on a field trip to Plymouth Plantation. So I'm going to jump in.
I learned from our field trip to Plymouth Plantation is I was surprised that there was a bug and we could feed him. My favorite part of the trip was when we went to the longhouse because we got to go inside and sit on animal fur, and I learned that the longhouse is used for winter.
So the podcast is a compilation of all the different students' little audio segments, and she put it all together in one podcast and shared it with the families. I know that Phoebe Peron, who is the instructional tech specialist at Finn, is planning on using podcasting with the Finn students. So at Finn, Phoebe needs to spend the first part of the the year teaching kids all about the computers and the keyboards and how to use various apps and how to log in. And then once the kids are familiar with all the devices and know how to log in, then she's able to work on some more creative projects. One of the things that they're going to be doing, they're learning about fact and opinion. So they're going to use green screen video, and they're going to create a game that will help them to understand that concept a little bit better. And last but not least, I wanted to talk about, and as I mentioned before, how technology can really level the playing field for kids with different learning styles. Students in the same classroom learn in different ways. There's technology that will help educators meet the needs of every student, including those with impaired vision or hearing, physical disabilities, and diverse approaches to processing new information. Colleen Ferguson is the Assistive Technology specialist that we use in the district, and she's fantastic. She meets with teachers and students and assesses their needs and skills, and figures out what hardware or software would best allow all of our students to access the curriculum. So one example of an online tool that we're using for students is something called Read and Write for Google. And what that tool does, so this is a Google Doc, probably looks familiar to all of you. And kids are using Google Docs to do all sorts of things from grade K all the way up to grade 12. And so this Read and Write extension, it produces this toolbar. It puts the toolbar really in anything that you can access through Google Drive or any web page. And it's just a set of tools that can help struggling learners. One of the things that's probably accessed the most is the text-to-speech option, so they can highlight some text and it would read it back to them, so it's great for struggling readers and writers or English language learners. They can listen to anything. They can listen to a web page. This could be accessed on a web page. They can listen to something that they've written. It helps them to proofread their work, anything that the teacher assigns. So really now they have equal access. It helps them with their comprehension. There's a word prediction tool up here that helps reluctant writers. There's a speech-to-text option that transcribes students' words as they talk, and that's helpful for those people who find typing tricky. And I thought this is a great tool. This is a vocabulary list. So you can go through, they can use these highlighting tools and they can highlight various words, and then they would click this vocabulary list, and it creates a little word bank with the words as well as the meaning of the words with some pictures, and then it allows them to have space to take their own notes. And then the last assistive technology tool I wanted to tell you about is it's actually a piece of hardware, and it's a device that's currently being used by a student in our district. And this has really leveled the playing field for this student. It is an electronic magnifier. It's portable, so he can take it from class to class. He can use it in assemblies, and that arm can rotate, and he can focus that in on what it is he needs to see, and then it magnifies it and enables him to look at it on a screen. And he now can access all the things that his peers are accessing visually, whereas without that device, it was not happening. It's really been a game changer for him. That's all I've got. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Comment. This is just great to see. I mean, when I first, after I joined the committee, I guess we were just talking about introducing one-to-one technology in the 4th grade, I think. And it's just amazing how far we've come since then. So just to try to put some context around all this, it's great to see.
I agree. Very impressive. Anyone else have any questions?
There's always concerns about girls STEM, not being as interested or engaging them more. Like what have teachers or you've been seeing that works?
Yeah, so
well?
we've actually seen sort of an increase in girls being involved in STEM. I know at the high school, there are more students signing up for computer science classes than ever before, and more girls than ever before. At Trottier, Sandy Scordato runs a Girls Who Code after-school program. I mean, there's still, it's still not the same amount, but we have seen an increase. Some of the new courses at the high school that are being offered for computer science, there's a computer science principles that isn't strictly coding, but it involves like just exploring more computer science fields, and that's been hugely popular. But it is a concern. It's something that we're mindful of and trying to address.
So what is the plan with Canvas now? It's in the middle schools. Is it going to any lower than that?
I don't think so for now, just based on, I think it's, at this point, probably not as age appropriate for those kids. Google Classroom is a free, more or less learning management system that is working very well. And for now, we think we're in a good place with 6 to 12 with Canvas. I mean, that could change, but I think because Google Classroom is serving the need in grades 3 to 5, that, and it's some second grade teachers are using it as well. For now, I think we're not considering it for any other grades.
The only reason I brought it up was on the communications end, where you did have a number of different communications tools at the lower end. I'm not sure whether they could integrate with Canvas and you could use that as the sole communication tool.
No, and I think that that's a valid point around, you know, if you're a parent who has a kid at Finn, Neri, and Trottier, and at Woodward, you're like, whoa, I'm getting like massive notification on. So we're about to use a new student information system. So hoping that might be able to be a tool that we could use for unified communication.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask the same thing, because it took me forever to figure out that Seesaw was for one school in Bloom. So like I would just, you know, I just would try logging into everything, and you know, eventually I figured it out. But and that was the other question that I had though, was is there a sort of process for orienting parents or the community or whoever needs to access things to each type of communication tool, because it does change?
Parents, I mean, to principals, maybe you could respond to that. I don't, do you?
Do it on the very basic overview, beginning of the year. When you come in for open house, there's usually some information about how to log in. And then ours is very simplistic. It's just more visuals than content. So once you're in, but
maybe we could even add some resources on the webpage with some directions, because that's a good idea.
Seesaw is very similar to Bloom's, where it's primarily about the student and work samples, and it's a way to communicate with parents and families. We do provide that information at our grade 2 orientation, and then there's a welcome letter and some instructions that go home with families at the beginning of the school year. But we've heard that comment from parents as they come from Finn to Woodward, is that it can be a little confusing switching from one platform to another.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And certainly with the addition of Canvas at Trottier, we had a lot of different resources for parents that were shared multiple times, and there's a section of the webpage that's dedicated to that, and Sandy's been very responsive too. So it's been a combination. Usually, you know, quick hitting questions, FAQs go a long way, but it's also good to pick up the phone and click through it with Sandy Scordato on the other end. So it's been utilized in a lot of different ways, especially with the new parent accounts that came online this fall.
Okay. So with all these different tools, there's a lot of pictures and personal stuff on these tools. What happens when, you know, a child moves out of Finn to Woodward to Neri, to all that information?
So these specific online tools, they only hold the information for a certain amount of time, and we at any time can communicate to them and say, please delete all information from. So we are in the process of getting agreements signed that will give us even more sort of management on the data, but they, in their contracts, they specifically sort of comment on how long they keep the data and then get rid of it, so it's not, they don't hold on to it for years. But I mean, it's a valid concern, and it's something that we need to be mindful of all the tools that we use, because we are sharing this with pictures and all
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how any one of these individual technology efforts happens? I mean, is it you suggesting things to the teachers, or vice versa, or some combination?
I think it's definitely a combination. Yeah. So the there are a lot of tools that teachers are using, and some of it happens where, you know, a teacher is a parent, and that parent lives in another town, and they said, hey, I'm using this, and then they introduce it. Some tools are introduced from the sort of technology team. We go to conferences and we learn about new things, or we're on Twitter and we're learning about new things. So it's really pretty varied in terms of how we get introduced to the tools. I mean, for the most part, I would like to think that the technology team is trying to stay current and research the best tools that make the most sense. But I don't know if that fits at all.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so old business, none at this time, and then superintendent's report to the committee.
So the first item is enrollments. In your packet, you have the December 16th, 2019 enrollments. We've maintained enrollments at 1,200 students, and we did not welcome any new students or no students left, so we are holding steady. And the second report in your packet is our enrollment projections for FY21. And currently we are in the process of kindergarten registration, so we don't have an accurate count of our projected kindergarten numbers. It's based on NESDEC, so that is a moving target. But we are also looking at the wave of enrollment and where where the enrollment shifts are happening. So for example, in grade 2 in FY21, the average class size would be 16.86 students per class, which is within our class range, but on the lower side. So we're monitoring that as we look at the budget, and we'll speak to that in a few minutes when we go through the budget process. So the next item in your packet is the FY 2020 budget monthly general fund expenditure report, and I'll have Becky Pellegrino speak to that report.
So there are no significant variances from last month's report, but one thing that you will notice is that there is a little bit more money on the bottom line remaining. We have been working with Student Support Services to look at our IDEA grant, and have actually made some moves that has freed up some money on the bottom line of the operational budget by transitioning certain services onto the grant. So last month we had 2.73 remaining on the bottom line, or 568,000, and this month we have 3.08 remaining, or 641,000. So that definitely freed up a little bit of money for us going forward for this fiscal year.
Okay, very good. We need a motion. Yep.
I'll move that we approve the Southborough fiscal 2020 budget monthly general fund expenditure report as of December 31st, 2019 until audit.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
So next in your packet is the FY 2021 school committee budget priorities, which I will speak to in more detail during the budget presentation. Okay. You also have the approved 2021 through 27 facilities capital plan, which was approved in November for your reference. And you also have the FY21 proposed budget calendar. So we've added all of the meetings that we've held in upcoming meetings. And the next meeting or next important presentation is this evening with the recommended budget presentation. And I think the important part of the budget calendar is it really tells a story around process and collaboration with building principals, but also the town in terms of how we get to a recommended budget.
Okay.
And then the last item from this evening's report from the superintendent is the FY21 recommended budget. So I will give a brief presentation. These are the graphs that I was talking about earlier. So again, I'm pleased to share with the committee and the community the FY 2021 recommended budget. To get to this budget, it's been a very collaborative process from the district leadership team to school-based leaders to educators. And we've had many, many meetings to get to this point, and it's been a very collaborative process. Not all the conversations are easy. But I just applaud the leadership team and principals for thinking outside the box and thinking of how we can sustain and grow our excellent school system in Southborough. So I always like to share that we are a mission and vision driven organization. We are not about the bottom line, but really around the service that we provide to students and really making sure that students leave the organization as critical thinkers, problem solvers, making sure that they have opportunities to prepare for innovation and engage in the global society. So we have an excellent vision, and currently part of the strategic planning process is really to look at that vision and update it where necessary. And then our mission really is to provide an exceptional educational experience for every student in a safe environment. So, as I mentioned earlier, the budget process begins in September and really does not conclude until, I would say, April or May. And then it feels like we start again. So we are always talking about the resources we have to achieve the goals that we've set. So just highlight some of the important meetings. Well, they're all important, but some of the meetings that took place in September, October, and November. This September, one of the new additions to the budget process is tour of the school facilities for school committee members to see the facilities and to hear about some of the enhancements and improvements, as well as some of the upgrades that we are thinking about as we enter into the budget process. In October, an important conversation is really speaking with the town administrator and understanding the town's financial context and landscape, and making sure that we, as an organization, have an understanding of the constraints or of what we need to do in terms of the budget for the town, so that the town can put forth an educationally sound and fiscally responsible budget. In November, a key activity is really thinking about the budget priorities. The budget process is really about trying to achieve goals, and these budget priorities help us think about how we want to allocate resources. In December, we present the preliminary budget, and that is after a lot of work has taken place with the leadership team and building principals and educators around what do we want to accomplish within that context that we spoke about at the town and state level. And then in January is the presentation of the recommended budget. It's meeting with the Southborough Financial Advisory and telling the story of the budget, and then the public hearing, which will take place at the next school committee meeting on February 12th. And then March is the Southborough Town meeting, which is this year, it's on Saturday, March 20th, 2020. So that's the budget process and some of the key events that take place during that process. This year, as we looked at the budget, we really began thinking about what are the the budget variables as we enter into the fiscal year 2021. And one of the variables is contractual obligations. We are in year 3 of a 3-year contract, and we are entering into contractual negotiations with the Southborough Teachers Association. So that's a variable that exists in this budget. I spoke earlier about the Student Opportunity Act and waiting to hear more information about Chapter 70 funding and new legislation and how that will impact the dollars that Southborough receives for education. Another variable is legal services renewal. We are in year 5 of a 5-year legal services contract, so really thinking about what impact financially going out for new legal services will have. And then lastly, we are in year 5 of a 5-year transportation contract, so really thinking about what impact a new transportation contract could have on the fiscal year 2021 budget. The budget that I'm presenting this evening takes into consideration these 4 budget variables. So the budget priorities, again, these are essential for the work that we do in terms of making decisions as a leadership team. Really, the first priority is to fund high priority items that are identified in our Vision 2020 strategic plan, as well as looking at school improvement plans and what we're trying to accomplish in our schools and with school councils. Maintaining the school facilities and the capital investments is always a budget priority. Also ensuring that we have adequate, consistent, and reliable funding to make sure that we continue to innovate and integrate 21st century skills into teaching and learning experiences. And I think Julie's presentation was very timely, and we've had a lot of success in that work, and this budget supports continued improvement in that area. Providing social and emotional training and professional development to our educators is a priority. And then providing an excellent education by placing a high priority on adequate staffing, maintaining student-to-teacher ratios, hiring best qualified candidates, and seeking to ensure that students are reaching their full potential. And then lastly, maintaining the multi-year technology cycle, renewal, and maintenance. So those are the goals that have driven this budget that you have that I'm presenting this evening. It's important to talk about the process. So principals and directors really think about what goals they want to accomplish for the fiscal year. Principals work very closely with their teachers and their curriculum leaders to think about what goals are going to be accomplished. They take all of that collective information and actually submit a building-based or district-based budget to the central office. We compile all that information and actually create an initial budget. So this year, with all of that work, the initial budget requests that were submitted by principals and district leaders totaled $22,802,220, which reflected a 9.52% budget increase over fiscal year 20. Again, part of the work is really having collaborative conversations with the town administrators and understanding the town context. The town administrators and the town leaders did not say that a 10% budget would be feasible. But it's an important exercise to really think about, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? If money were not an issue, what are some of the things we'd like to do? Understanding that was not a realistic percentage increase, the principals and leadership team looked at that initial budget request, and we were able to reduce that initial budget increase by $584,244 to come up with a second initial budget of $22,217,976, or a 6.72% increase. Again, understanding the landscape and where we needed to be in terms of the recommended budget, the principals and the leadership team came together, and we were able to look line item by line item to see where there were potential savings without impacting programming for students. Through that work, we were able to reduced that second initial budget by $555,280 to present a preliminary budget in December that reflected a 4.04% increase. Since that budget presentation, we actually had more meetings and more discussions, and through some savings of the student information system, we were able to reduce that at another $4,627. And this evening, we are recommending a budget of $21,658,069 for an increase of 4.02%. We did do an exercise of trying to get to 3.5% and what that would do in terms of impacting programs and allowing us to achieve our goals. And we felt as a team that the 4.02% budget would allow us to grow and also sustain the excellent programming, the excellent system that we have in Southborough. So some of the budget reductions that we saw, so one of the reductions that we were able to make is around special education programming, $584,244. And that is, it sounds like a large reduction, but it's really more about creative thinking and programming and making sure that we can meet the needs of the diverse learners in our system. So through the Student Support Services Office and collaboration with principals, we feel like we can actually sustain a savings of $584,244 by creating programming and not sending students outside for out-of-district programs. So staffing shifts and line items. So every year we have shifts in staff. You know, for example, Gary moving up to the principalship and hiring a new assistant principal. Through those shifts, there are savings that happen. So there are many of those types of shifts that happen over the course of a budget process. And also looking very closely at line items, we were able to identify $403,155 in additional reductions. And lastly, staffing reductions, really looking at our shifting in enrollment. We as an organization are contracting in terms of enrollment. We're not growing or decreasing. And really looking at where can we look at staff reductions through whether retirements or looking at class sizes that are well below our class size policy and trying to capture some savings. So this is kind of the enrollment landscape that we're seeing from FY20 to FY21. So in grade 2, and from FY20 to FY21, we're seeing a decrease of 21 students. In grade 4, 13 students. In grade 7, 4. In grade 8, 9. You know, again, this information is essential to look at as we look at the budget and where we need to deploy staff and resources. So again, we're seeing a shift in the second grade population for next year, as well as the 4th grade, and a slight shift in grades 7 and 8. The story also that is important to share is that we are seeing our pre-K and K numbers expand. So we're starting to see our early childhood enrollment numbers increase. So we're anticipating another increase the student enrollment wave coming through our organization as we look at the pre-K and K numbers. What you have for FY21 is for K, again, is not on that slide, but we are predicting an increase from FY20 to FY21. So an important, this slide talks about the budget offsets and impact to staffing. So the educator position, so in terms of this recommended budget, it has reduces educator positions by 1.5 through retirement, primarily in looking at people who are shifting positions, which totals $106,752. And then also looking at educational support professionals, working very closely with the student support services team, and building principals, and looking at the cohort of students we have moving through. And we've identified 2 educator support professionals for a total of $50,000. And it's important to note that these specific positions have not yet been identified, so we don't know exactly the positions, but those are the reductions in staffing for a total of $156,752. So the budget drivers for fiscal year 21, we are seeing an increased cost of out-of-district placements. We are seeing that we have an increased number of students who require residential out-of-district placements. And we're seeing that, for example, one placement can cost up to $350,000 per year. So the $484,236 increase reflects just a couple of students in our obligation to meet their needs and provide the programs that they need, that those students need to meet their potential. The other budget driver is the student information system upgrade, which is an increase of $25,413. Digital curriculum, so our digital curriculum for mathematics, the 7-year license will sunset at the end of this year. So fiscal year 21 has $48,672 to upgrade those resources, as well as to support the new history and social science curriculum framework implementation plan. And then lastly, we have contractual obligations and line item increases that total $278,874. So the story about this budget, it's really a level services budget with a few growth areas. So the recommended FY21 budget is $21,658,069 for a recommended budget increase of $837,195 for a total budget increase of 4.02% over fiscal year 20. And again, the budget growth areas that we're seeing is really the upgrade of the student information system, some enhancements and improvements in our instructional resources, and also because we are seeing a more diverse population, really expanding our translation services to meet the needs of translation. And then this last slide is just really envisioning the future, some of the conversations that the leadership team had about the FY21 budget, some ideas that were considered but aren't included, but are essential to keep at the forefront of our work. You know, one of the conversations that the committee has had over the past couple years is really expanding world language instruction at the elementary level. That continues to be something that we'd like to see happen, but it's not part of this FY21 budget. We are looking to implement solar to offset utility costs. So that's something that we're looking at for the future in terms of being able to offset utility costs and using that funding and that resource to expand some of our other programs that directly connect to helping students achieve their goals. We're looking at expanding our summer enrichment programming so that we have a way to generate revenue to be able to promote and provide enrichment programming during the school year. Another goal of ours is really to look at intuitive data systems. So we have a tremendous amount of data on our students and our learners, but it's still very cumbersome to disaggregate the data, to compile the data. So we're looking at ways we can create digital dashboards for students in schools that we can ask questions and quickly get the answers around how our students are performing and how our schools are performing. Expanding our dynamic digital curriculum tools and resources. We have done a great job of moving into the 21st century in terms of digital resources, but there are still resources that are in the 20th century that we hope to expand in the future. And then lastly, really looking at modernizing our classroom spaces for collaboration. So looking, for example, looking at some of the work that has been done at Trottier with Sandy Scardato in terms of flexible learning spaces. So furniture is easily moved to accommodate what's happening in terms of the learning environment. Some of the work that's happened at Neary in terms of the Red Cat audio systems and expanding that work across our school system. And then just really looking at furniture. So the traditional student desk doesn't always meet the needs of our current learning environment. So really looking at expanding the collaborative tools and resources and spaces that we have for our students. So again, that is the recommended budget for fiscal year 2021, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? I have a question.
Sure.
So in the enrollment comparison slide, that's primarily showing the change from kind of class, I mean, because you have
It's
a
just
set
shifting.
class of,
We're shifting.
right, okay.
Exactly.
Okay, and so the idea is
So one of the
shift
things,
resources, or, yeah.
yeah, so a couple things that we do is we try to project a couple years out. For example, it does not make sense to reduce a classroom teacher in a grade level that we know in a year or two out we'll have to add that teacher back in.
Right, okay.
So we're trying to look at it strategically and looking at the retirements that are happening and try to decrease staffing through retirements. So when someone retires, potentially if that person is in a position not replacing that position and shifting staff.
If it's a year that's not needed or
Correct.
something, then, okay.
But we try to be very strategic around looking at enrollment trends, not just for next year, but also 2 and 3 years out.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Maybe just a comment about, I happen to be on the regional school committee as well, and 4.2 is a little bit higher than we've had the past few years, but the high school budget is going to be coming in basically 0 or a little less, mainly because of the enrollment. Southborough enrollment is lower than Northborough. So when you put it all together, the number is what, 2 point something?
It's in 2.5 around that range, and the conversations that we've had with the town administrator, Mark Purple, and the select board was that they have an aggregate budget for pre-K through 12, and the range that they asked us to come in at was between 2.5 and 3.5%, pre-K through 8, and at 3.5%, and then 9 through 12, 3.5%.
Okay.
So, as Paul said, we're looking at, we're projecting close to a 0% increase at the 9 through 12 level, which is going to help with the 4.2%.
Yeah.
So it's going to average to closer to a 2% total aggregate budget increase to Southborough for education dollars spent.
I also wonder if it would be, and that's excellent, I also wonder, I mean, if you look at the percentage, what the percentage increase would be, if you're only including it, and it's not that it's discretionary, but you know, items that are not contractually or legally required, then it's a very small, it's actually quite a small increase. It's just that it's being driven by some contractual and legal obligations, and
exactly.
You know,
I think that, and that's an important point. It's not that we've asked for more than last year.
Right.
It's that we've had shifting. We have to shift resources to meet certain obligations.
Right.
So if you look at the line items of the line item budget, you're not going to see increases in what principals requested.
Right. And we've looked at the line item budget,
exactly.
and the only things that change are the ones that are listed here.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay, anyone else? Thank you. I mean, it's apparent how much work goes into this, and it's obviously it's very carefully considered, and thank you for all your time and efforts on this.
And I just would like to compliment the financial team and Becky and the principals and the district leaders. That's where the work happens, and I get to present it. But a lot of time and energy and conversations went into the budget that you see in front of you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We'll need a vote to approve.
Okay.
I'm happy to make a motion. I'll move that we approve the Southborough Public School District recommended budget for fiscal year 2021 as presented here on January 8th, 2020.
Okay. You have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
So we're accepting the proposed budget?
The recommended budget.
Just the recommended budget. And can I ask something silly? It says from 1/1 to 1.
Well, this is the working budget.
Yeah.
Oh wait, recommended budget. I don't know.
Okay.
That's not a question I can answer.
Is it a column header?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
We can.
All right. So
Okay.
we can vote.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us to educational policy, approval of grants and donations.
So Brian Fantoni wrote a Maya grant for the Southborough Public Schools, and he was awarded that grant for a total of $2,243. So it was great work on his part, seeking alternative funding to support the facilities and operations budget. So we need a motion to accept that grant.
Okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the MIA grant to Southborough Public Schools in the amount of $2,243.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor? Great. Nice work.
Yeah.
So next in your packet is policy development. So we have a first reading of the sexual harassment in the school, A100. And basically the policy subcommittee, we sent the policy off to legal counsel to review and provide any updates. So the policy that you have in your packet is reflective of legal counsel's recommendations. So it's a first read this evening. And then so the legal counsel made no recommendations. So we are distributing the policy, sexual harassment in the workplace, and marking as reviewed because there are no changes.
Okay. Okay.
And that is it for policy.
All right. Then that brings us to personnel items. Seems
So
like
still working, getting used to this digital
I know.
packet.
Me too.
So, doing a lot of
I have a
stuff.
page here that says no staff changes.
Yes, so there are no staff changes.
Okay. All right, and then no communications, so action on minutes. There's some minutes in here. Anyone have, well, I guess we can make a motion and then ask for comments, or anyone
I'll
have
move
any?
that we approve the minutes of the open meeting of December 11th, 2019.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? All right. And then we have a paper copy here of the executive session minutes from December 11th.
Approve and retain.
We approve and retain, yeah.
I'll move that we approve and retain the minutes from the executive session of Wednesday, December 11th, 2019.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, great. Okay, then we have approval of bills and payrolls is next, which we'll do later. Agenda items for next month. We have the public hearing on the budget. Anyone have any other?
The public hearing.
Anything else next month? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure
We
it
could
will
provide
develop
a,
over time.
Yes.
We could provide an update on some of the task force, the school start time task force, as well as the strategic planning task force and the music study group.
Okay.
Any presentations that you would like to, principals? You can get back to me.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, that brings us to our second round of audience sharing. Would like to share anything now?
So I have
okay.
a couple
Oh, yeah.
items to share. So
Great.
We have launched the strategic planning process in November, and we've held a number of community sessions and teacher sessions around Portrait of a Graduate, and really thinking about what we want our graduates with skills and knowledge and attributes when they leave our organization. So part of that work is also having some community sessions. So tomorrow is a community session from 4 to 5:30 at Algonquin Regional High School, and the community is welcome to attend, and we'll be engaging in an exercise to get community's feedback and input. That will be repeated on this January 14th from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at Algonquin Regional High School as well. So if folks can't make that session, the 14th is also available.
Great, wonderful.
How did the first session go?
So we had a very small group, but very powerful conversations. So it was good.
I'll put in a plug for that. I participated at the, what are we calling that committee? The steering committee?
Yes, yeah.
It's an interesting process. You know, you get 4 or 5 different groups
Yeah.
looking at it from different points of view. So.
Okay. Great. All right, anything else? Okay, so now we're going to go into executive session. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll move that we go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining due to the chair's determination that the discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the committee with no intent to return to open meeting.
Second?
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.